76 years ago today, a very crucial battle occurred in the island of Iwo Jima that took thousands of lives from both the American and Japanese forces. Why was it a crucial battle? Lying roughly halfway between American Army Air Force bases in the Mariana Islands and the Japanese islands, the military base on Iwo Jima gave the Japanese an ability to send early air raid warnings to the Japanese mainland and launch fighters from its airfields to intercept raids. The American invasion, designated Operation Detachment, had the purpose of capturing the island with its two airfields, South Field and Central Field. The strategic objectives were twofold. The first was to provide an emergency landing strip for battle-damaged B-29s unable to make it back to U.S. air bases in the Marianas Tinian, Saipan, Guam. The second was to provide airfields for fighter escorts, long-range P-51s, to provide fighter coverage to the bombers. The 5-week battle saw some of the most savage and bloody fighting of the Pacific War. The Americans expected an expedited invasion process. Nimitz created a U.S. Joint Expeditionary Force of Navy and Marines to carry out Operation Detachment. At its disposal was an armada of 11 warships that were intended to soften up Japanese defenses with sustained bombardment. Major General Harry Schmidt took charge of marine operations. He fielded the largely veteran 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions, totaling some 70,000 troops. U.S. intelligence had reported only 13,000 Japanese defenders and excellent beach terrain for landing, so planners chose to have the Marines land on the southeastern beach in 7 sections, listed southwest to northeast: green, red 1, red 2, yellow 1, yellow 2, blue 1, and blue 2. The 28th Regiment at Green would plow across the 0.5 mile, 0.8 kilometers, stretch to the other side of the island to cut off and eventually take Mount Suribachi. The 27th Regiment at Red 1 and 2 would head northward past Motoyama 1, which would be taken by the 23rd Regiment at Yellow 1 and 2. The 25th Regiment at Blue 1 and 2 would head east to secure the right flank. Schmidt was prepared for Japanese banzai attacks and expected the swarm of bodies to expedite the invasion process, anticipating total control of the island in no more than 4 days. Japanese defense, however, ensured that the American invasion wouldn't be a walk in the park. In May 1944, Japanese Prime Minister Tojo Hideki had sent seasoned Lieutenant General Kurabayashi to Damichi to organize the defense of Iwo Jima. Despite the apparent futility of resistance, Kurabayashi resolved to make the United States bleed for its victory. He began by ordering the construction of a tunnel network beneath the island to provide both protection and a means to circumvent enemy lines. He then had his troops erect hundreds of pillboxes, blockhouses, and gun sites for above-ground coverage, many of which were so well constructed that only a direct hit from a battleship could cause serious damage. However, rather than heavily defending the coastline, he planned to keep his soldiers in caves and tunnels until the Americans advanced far enough inland to be decimated by coordinated infantry and artillery fire. Finally, in a break from traditional Japanese defensive strategy, Kurabayashi gave his men strict orders to abandon the often suicidal banzai charges and instead killed 10 Americans each from their hideouts. By the time U.S. forces initiated their assault, Kurabayashi's Iwo Jima garrison had grown to an estimated 21,000 soldiers. The battle. The U.S. committed 110,308 military personnel to the battle, from naval and air crews to the Marines. The American forces also included 17 aircraft carriers and 1,170 aircraft, according to the U.S. Department of Defense. The Americans were aware of the Japanese fortifications on the island, but President Franklin D. Roosevelt refused to authorize the use of poison gas shells, which could possibly have made the island easier to secure. A conventional, but heavy bombardment began in the weeks before the battle, but it had little effect. The first wave of U.S. Marines approached the beach of Iwo Jima at 8:30 a.m. local time on February 19, 1945. The lead landing craft strafed the beaches with rocket and cannon fire, with supporting fire from air and naval forces. However, when amphibious vehicles came ashore, they quickly became bogged down in the steep volcanic sand. The Marines were pinned down on the increasingly crowded beaches and were exposed to attack from artillery placed on Mount Suribachi, as well as machine guns from pillboxes just inshore. The war in the Pacific pitted the Allies against a ferocious opponent in Japan, a nation determined to forge its own empire and fight to the last man rather than surrender. The Marines were forced to shelter where they could, in shallow foxholes and among the wreckage of burning vehicles. The Americans suffered almost 2,500 casualties on the first day. Nevertheless, 30,000 were able to reach the shore, and over the following few days, the battle concentrated on Mount Suribachi, which the Americans captured on February 23, according to the book Battle, A Visual Journey Through 5,000 Years of Combat by R.G. Grant, D.K., 2005. Despite the capture of Suribachi, the Americans had taken only the southern part of Iwo Jima. They spent months inching north to conquer the whole island. The Japanese used the rocky terrain to hide and prepare ambushes, which hindered the Marines' progress. The battle ended on March 26, 1945, when U.S. forces declared they had secured the island. Casualties and recognition of bravery. Of the original Japanese garrison of 22,000, approximately 20,000 were killed or missing in action, including General Kurabayashi, whose body was never recovered. Only 1,000 surrendered, which was a large number for Japanese forces. While many chose to commit suicide rather than be captured alive, many soldiers were too badly injured or too ill to do so. By contrast, there were over 26,000 American casualties, with 6,821 killed. Of this number, 5,931 were Marines, or twice as many as were killed during World War I, according to the text War from Ancient Egypt to Iraq, edited by Saul David, D.K., 2009. Despite the sacrifice, a large part of the American success on Iwo Jima was due to the heroism of individual soldiers. A total of 27 medals of honor were given for acts of extreme courage during the battle. 5 were presented to naval personnel, while the remaining 22 medals were given to U.S. Marines, many of them posthumously. As of February 2020, the only recipient still alive on the 75th anniversary of the battle is Herschel W. Williams. The bravery shown on Iwo Jima was neatly summarized by the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, who said, "Among the men who fought on Iwo Jima, uncommon valor was a common virtue." We hope that you learned something from the video. Do support us by liking this video, and, if you haven't yet, subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell. Your support may not require much from you, but it means so much to us. Thank you.